The basic things you need to know about temptation. Here's a topic that any of us and all of us can relate to in very practical ways. Now, interestingly, this booklet I wrote together with Lars Dunberg, and so I sometimes joke that I wrote the more, theological part of this book. What does the Bible say about temptation? And Lars, being older and more experienced in being tempted, he wrote the more practical parts of temptation. But all joking aside, this little booklet is a important booklet, and it's a serious topic as we all battle with the reality of temptation, not only in our world, but in our own lives, in different ways, to different degrees, and in different seasons. And so in this booklet, we'll talk about the nature of temptation, common ways that we are tempted, and we'll take a look at how characters in Scripture handled or mishandled seasons or situations that they found themselves in by which they were tempted through. And of course, we'll look at ways that we can overcome temptation. One of those being how Paul writes about in the book of Galatians to live by the Spirit. And when and as we live by the Spirit, we will not do what our flesh wants us to do and give in to sin and temptation. And basically what Paul is communicating is that if we focus on what God has called us to do and are faithful to do that, that's one way that we will be spared the consequences of temptation, of giving into temptation. So for example, King David, one time we are told that when kings go off to war, he stayed back in Jerusalem. And so because he wasn't where he should have been, he ended up doing what he never should have done. He got tempted and he gave into that temptation, and the consequences were quite serious in his life and his family from that point onward, even though David confessed his sin and truly repented and found God's forgiveness and grace in his life. So we'll even talk about in this booklet what happens if or when we do fall into or give into temptation, because even in those situations, there is hope, there is mercy, and there is forgiveness. So this is a very practical little booklet, and it's a very helpful and needed booklet as we navigate the reality of temptation in our lives. Because no matter how long or how short you have been following Jesus, temptation is a real and present threat and danger to all of our lives, our relationship with God, and our relationships with one another. The basic things you need to know about temptation.